All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. It is June 24th, and we just got through the short week that we had, and now we are coming up on the end of the month. So we have one more week of month left, and then we are done. So I wanted, as always, to start with the economic calendar. I'm looking through this, and I'm like, Howell is speaking on Wednesday and Thursday. What is this guy talking about? Like, I literally had to go look it up, you guys, because I'm like, I don't understand. They had the FOMC, and then he just testified in front of the House and Senate. So what is he talking about? I don't think this is going to affect the market. Now, granted, he opens his mouth and it does, but this shouldn't. It's a policy panel discussion at the European Central Bank. Like, that has nothing to do with us. And then on Thursday, I thought this was a typo, but it's on the Federal Reserve website as well at 2:30 a.m. But it's the dialogue with the Bank of Spain, so it makes sense that it would be at a crazy time because this is maybe their time. I didn't go further into how far the time difference is, but that's what I'm thinking why this is at 2:30. So hopefully we will have a regular week. So, all right, let me remove some of this stuff so y'all are not confused. All right. There we go. Okay, so let us get started with our regular things. So looking at the VIX to get started. Now, granted, remember, we have been watching the VIX. The VIX has been on this downtrend. The VIX has now sat at this support for about 3 weeks in a row. It washed a little bit below here, but then it recovered, and now it's just sitting there. So again, we do still have room to the downside if it does want to continue to the downside. Those same levels that I've been giving the past couple of weeks kind of just are the same. So you see where it's at. It can drop further, but we know that it's had 4 red weeks in a row. So, at some point we do need a green week. Although we could have this was 6 red weeks in a row, so we could have a couple more red weeks. July is seasonally bullish. So, we did get a week of corrective activity, so we may get one more week and then we go back in the direction of the trend or not. We just want to be prepared for it either way. Looking at the dollar, it also had a little bit of a recovery this week, but now it's sitting. It rejected these EMAs right here, so now it's just sitting here. You got to see what it does. It did do a 2 down, so it can definitely, and it's green, so it can definitely do a 2 down, 2 up. So if so, then 103.80 would be that target, and that support is right there where it rejected from, that 102.03. Looking at it on the day, I didn't look at the VIX on the day, but it's kind of the same. If you can, you know what? Let me switch to my other one, y'all, because I don't like this chart. There we go. Because that other chart didn't have my lines on it. But since we're here, let's go ahead and look at it on the day. Basically, this is how it's been looking. Again, like I said, it washed below, found some support. It could definitely 2-1-2 up, or it can continue on this downtrend that it's on. So yeah, looking at the dollar on the day, it's still under its 200 and under these EMAs. So we're still bearish on it. And you can see it rejected right here. So just have to kind of see what this does. If it does do that 2 up, then it may make it back up to this 200. At least it did come down to kind of meet it. You can kind of see that it's trying to turn a little flat. So you'd have to see if it breaks above it before you get bullish on it. It hasn't done that in a long time. See, even here, the last time it did something like this, it took a long time to come back up to it. So if it goes back up, because you can see it did this kind of double bottom here. If it goes back up and is able to break above it, that may be some strength for it to go to the upside. Remember that the dollar has been kind of moving in a range for the longest. So we're looking to see if it's going to break in one direction or the other. But it does still look bearish. So, but it's basically stuck in this range. We've been talking about it for weeks. Look at it on the weekly. It's chopping in between here, and right in the middle of this Broadman formation. So Looking at the NASDAQ, so last week when we looked at it, we said, all right, we had a nice TTO here. We do still have room to the upside, but however, we do need some corrective activity. You see on the weekly, we're still way above the EMAs here, and although it likes to ride it, it also likes to correct to it. So it didn't have much of a correction where it hasn't touched the 8 since May. So if anything, we got this inside week here. We'll also see that on XLK and technology. So it may, and it closed a little bit closer to the downside. So if it does a 212 down, it could definitely come down here to this 14,566. So that's what I would be looking for with NASDAQ. Now remember, we are still above our 200 on all of these. All of our EMAs are pointing up. This is the first time that we have tested the 8 and rejected it in a very long time. So I think this is key also, because we do have that red inside week. If it did pull to the downside, we could start seeing it come down to the test this 20. Now remember, we don't want to really be bearish as long as we're way above this 200. We can correct all the way down to some of these EMAs and then still keep going upside. So we have this inside day here. Really interesting to see how tech moves from here. We have made, good highs. So I am looking for probably another corrective week, because we were saying last week we wanted that inside week, right? So that we can set it up for a 212 down. Then that could even further set up for a 1-2 down to up reversal if it wants to continue in the direction of the trend. But we still do need some corrective activity here on the weekly. Looking at the Dow, it is similar to the dollar. It's stuck in a range. All right, so we have the support on the EMAs. But if you notice the difference between this one and the NASDAQ, even looking at it on the day, the EMAs are much tighter. So although our 200 is flat, we're above it, we're still going to stay bullish. The EMAs are definitely tighter here. And on the daily, the Dow, you see this 8 is starting to turn down. If this 8 crosses below this 20 and it continues to the downside, we can at least look for it to correct down to this 200. So 332 is probably what I'll be looking for. You got somewhat of a head and shoulders here. This is the shoulder area. So could be more downside on the Dow. Small caps, so they had a couple of good weeks. It finally broke out of this range right here, and I had a feeling that once it broke out that it was going to come back down and retest this range. So I think that this is really like a do or die moment, because if it trades right back down into this range, it's still in this chop. However, if you look at it on the week, that's exactly what it does every time it hits this area. It rejects it hard, rejects, hard, rejects. So now we have to see what small caps are going to do. If you look at this candle, they ended like the close ended like really close to the bottom of that candle. So really interested to see what IWM is going to do. We were targeting this gap for the longest, and then now we have this gap down here at the bottom that they could possibly want. However, that was the first break above the 200. It did close below, and our EMAs are turning down, and we have a shooter on the day. So honestly, IWM could possibly be another, let me see, look at it on 4 hour. Nope, it doesn't have this is not an actionable signal actually. Maybe you can find one on the 1 hour, because IWM does like to move on Mondays, but if it does and this shooter, the bears, take control, then we can look for it to come down a little bit more to this 179, 178.36, 177.44, and then this gap fill 176.17. If it does not like recover from here, then we're right back into this chop area that kind of, we boomed from here. So we boomed and then we kind of fell. It's almost looked like what Baba did. Baba had us bullish for a second and it was like, rounded reversal down. So this could also be a head, and it can make a shoulder here before it drops a little bit. So because we had this strong move, we may have an inside week to either set up more downside or a recovery. really would need to break. You can see this 187, 188 area was a really, really strong resistance for it. It rejected from there several times. It was a previous support and a resistance. So rejected hard. So that's IWM. I'm gonna keep hitting this thing, y'all. The Qs gonna look like NASDAQ. You got an inside week here that's red. You got room for more corrective activity. You do have a PMG on the week, depending on how much it wants to correct. You got that fresh TTO. So it's really interesting how this played out. Like I said last week, I said we were looking for a corrective week. So although I honestly did not know what kind of candle it would end up with, this one looks like the bears are in control, but it's a small enough candle where it could 212 up if that was all of the corrective activity that we're going to get. So just keep that in mind. It could trade back into full time frame continuity, but it's an inside week, so it's a decent setup there. If you look at it on the day, like the NASDAQ, you got this shoulder, head, shoulder possible. So that could give us more of that downside. So we're going to target 355.50, 347.85, and then we have a gap here that we do want to keep our eyes on, 333.29, if it wants to really come down. So this is a smaller head and shoulders, but also there's this shoulder here. This could be a head, and then we could come down here and make this a shoulder before we even drop further. So of course that'll put us in July, which is kind of against seasonality, but hey, we're always ready for either direction. We do want to note though, just like the NASDAQ, this has closed below its 8 for the first time since here. Last time it closed below the 8 though, it boomed from there. So we could definitely see, and it's a 3-1 on the day, we can definitely see a 3-1-2 up and go back in the direction of the trend. So that is the Qs. Here is SPY. So SPY, we knew it hit the top of the broadening formation and rejected, and that it had taken out a major resistance, and we needed some corrective activity. So we have it here. This is one of the best inside weeks that I like, because it's so close to the end here that I really am expecting the 212 down to SPY. So I'm looking for SPY to get to 430 at the very least, with this correction that we can have at least to the 8s before we continue in the direction of the trend. We have a shooter on the day. Even though it's green, it's still a shooter. So yeah, I'm definitely expecting more downside. And this looks like the Qs, where you have this shoulder, head, possible shoulder area, or even the shoulder, head, shoulder, if you want to call it like that, for some more downside. And so 430 was going to be my first target. Then 425 was an area that it rejected several times, and we do have a teeny little gap here about 423 that we would want to target. There are more gaps to the downside, but we're not going to really stay bearish. We really want to look at it as corrective activity until we see these EMAs start crossing to the downside. I do want to note that the MACD is trying to cross on the daily here. It's not as strong of a signal as it is like if it was crossing on the weekly, but just note that the MACD is crossing to the downside. It could most certainly cross and then cross right back up like it did here, where we had that corrective activity, cross down, and then it crossed right back up. So I'm looking forward to probably correct at least to this 20, at least to 430. It may gap down on Monday, but if not, then you would have that signal with this shooter here, and then you have it would be a 3-2 down on the 4 hour to that 430. So that could be a Monday play. And then if it did the 430, it would trigger the 2-1-2 down. That would be your weekly signal. So 4 hour, 3-2 down to trigger the inside week to the target of 430. Where it goes from there, We don't know. Again, it could set up a 2-1-2 down, and then we have a 1-2-2 rev strat, or it could 2-1-2 down and really come down. So we just gotta have to see where it's going to go. But it is set up in a bearish manner. What we do want to keep an eye on with these indices, though, are the big dogs that move them. So, for instance, Apple. Apple, we know, is somewhat at the top of this Broadner formation. It does still have a tiny bit more room. I can get to this 188. And then we said that we were going to do psychological numbers, 190, 195, up until we got into about 200. As far as where can Apple go. Oh, that is so great. They would start cutting grass while I'm recording. Who cuts grass in the middle of the day? It's so hot. All right, so looking at Apple, it's been going straight up. Kind of looks like Meta. It's just been riding the EMAs. This is not giving us any signal that it's about to reverse when you look at it on the month. Though, again, the only signal, hopefully that won't come through. The only signal we have here is the fact that it's nearing the top of its Broadner formation. So we might get some corrective activity if it does the 2 up, 2 down. But if you look at this, if anything, it corrects to the 20 and bounces. So most I would give it would be 181.72. And then we can revisit this next week after we see, because, this could definitely be the top and be ahead. Microsoft, inside week and red. So this one would be one to watch. If we break this 332 and come down here to this 324.51, then we most definitely may see some correction in the indices. So keep an eye on Microsoft, especially because it's had that run. This could possibly be ahead, and then we would be in this shoulder area right here. Shooter on the day, 2-1, 2 down. 331.44 is going to be your first one, and then 324.51 if it wants to come all the way down. Now, granted, it has not broken the 20 since back here, and even there it recovered. Even before then, it hasn't broken the 20 and held below since the beginning of this year. So keep that in mind. However, it is looking bearish, you guys, for at least this week. Meta still has room. Meta has been green. Man, when this thing corrects, yeesh. And it's crazy because it has its corrections, but I mean, even on the week, it's just going up. So again, when this thing corrects, it's going to correct. Now, granted, we do have still a gap to fill to the upside. Way up here at 318. So I don't think it's another gap. Nope. Nope, I think that's it. That's the only gap. But I think that's the gap that they're going for. So if anything, as you can see how it's been riding the EMAs. They're buying every dip. Even if it dips to the 20. So that would be the lowest dip so far. But this would be the first. It has left now 2 gaps to the downside. So, but as long as like Meta keeps going and, Amazon, Tesla, the Qs are not really going to fall. Now, Tesla has also been green and it has a PMG on the week. So if it does and it rejected here, it's not a shooter, but it is a red 2 up. So if anything, if it does do a 2 down and comes down to at least correct down to these EMAs, that can help the Qs and NASDAQ move. It's kind of the same thing with Amazon, except Amazon is not looking bearish. They had a class action lawsuit and that wasn't anything for it, but then they introduced AI stuff, and yeah, they have actually been doing well. There's still more room to the upside. So 136, 154 is my first target, and then 147 on 46.50-ish. And if you can see, you see these EMAs are starting to cross up. On the daily, we are above our 200 and all the EMAs. So, it gives you that corrective activity and then it goes. So it's really based right here. and then boomed from that. So if anything, if it does do a 2 down, it may come down to correct again to this 8 and then go back in the direction of the trend. Full time frame continuity on Amazon, so it's not time to short. Nvidia is another one that is a mover. I wanted to point this out. I know I don't normally talk about it, but it has a nice shooter on the day. You know Nvidia's been on a tear. I'm not the day, the week. It's been on a tear. So this may be some corrective activity. It needs to break this 421.12, and then your weekly target would be 386.79. That would be a serious drop, but chips have been moving. But it may even come down to at least half of this candle. So 412 would be my first target before that 386. But it definitely could make it back to that 386 because we know Nvidia has hit all-time highs and it's now rejected. So it could definitely do for a correction. It could correct more than that as well. This could be our head and our shoulder area. So you got shoulder, head. So it may come back and work this out. We do have a huge gap here to the downside. It may not iron all of this out right now, but it is looking pretty bearish. So it did find support here at this 8. So even though it did boom up and have its corrective activity, it's being bought at the 8. Boom, come down, is being bought. So you really want to see it break that, because then it's going to start turning to the downside. So this also may be a decent play on Monday to get to this 405. Monday is looking really bearish, y'all. Break that 421. You got your inside candle here under the EMAs. So yeah, Nvidia could definitely give us some corrective activity on Monday. Google has been trading in a range, and I did want to speak about this last week and I forgot. Sorry, Robin. But I did let her know that it was trading in this range, and if it broke through, we were looking for it to go to 120. It did hit that 120, and it rejected. So we do have a rev strat set up. If we're bullish next week, then if it breaks that 125, you can look for Google to go back up to that 129.63. Otherwise, it's not really an actionable signal on the weekly there, but on the daily here, you do have this 3-1. It's green, and it's like, so it's under the EMAs now. So really, it really would need to break above. I would need you to break above 124 to give us some real bullish activity, because this could definitely have been like a TTO, and it could reverse back into the trend. Otherwise, it may decide to come down, and we do have a gap down here we can fill to the downside if it does. This does look like a head and shoulders here, though. So Jay would say creation, confirmation, trend. All right, and really quick, I just wanted to look at the banks because I was looking for them to break out from this. You kind of look like it's an inverted head and shoulders, but this is the top of that shoulder, that 144, and it rejected it really, really hard, you guys. So it ended with a 3 on the week. This 3 could 3-2 down. And so 134.58 would be my next target. But just keep in mind, this is kind of in this chop area. When I was looking at it, I was really looking for them to break out. So even if it had maybe a 3-1, 2 up, just watch banks. Otherwise, it also could be, they could all be bearish because, well, no, we're still above our 200 here. We do have a gap to fill to the downside, but again, you guys see this chop, right? Like, who don't trade this right here. There's a nice hammer here on the day, but we are like in between EMAs. The best way to trade these is not when they're in between them, but when they're above or below and they're using them as points of support and resistance. So not when they're in between, because it's really kind of indecision. So all right, let us look at the sectors really quick. You got XLY. We have an inside week with the doji, so nobody's really in control. But again, you have all of these green weeks, so we're looking for a little bit of correction. Find your favorite stock. Remember, once I go through these, if you see a setup you like, find your favorite stock from that sector and your favorite setup. XLC Communications, you got a 2 down red, but almost a hammer. So that may have been the only corrective activity. If it does do a 2 down, 2 up, then it could go back into the direction of the trend. XLK Technology looks just like NASDAQ. So you got this red inside week here. So looking for a little bit more corrective activity. XLE, we got our break to the downside that we were talking about last week. And remember, our favorite from this is ZOM. And ZOM is almost at the outside quarter target. So we are still looking for it to get to 98.02 if they continue having a bearish week this week. It has been like slowly going there. It's definitely in a bearish trend, but it's taking its time. We have one more week of quarter left, so it could do it or it could not. But keep that in mind. We have one more week of month and quarter yet, and then next week we start a new quarter, new week, new month time frame. Continuity is going to just be all out of whack. So keep that in mind. XLF gave us a 2 down on the week and didn't quite hit its target, but still in its bear trend. XLU, kind of the same thing, and also hit its target. So if anything, this is just going to continue or probably be an inside week. XLI, inside week in red. So your favorite industrial may do have some corrective activity. XLV is an inside week in green. It's not a hammer or anything, strong like that to say the bulls are in control. However, it did have our corrective activity. It is above these EMAs now, so it may move to the upside. We do have full time frame continuity here. So find your favorite healthcare stock and see if you like that setup. XLP, consumer staples, we got a red inside week, and basically you see here that it rejected these EMAs, and it closed below them, so that's a bearish sign. However, it's really kind of trading in this range that it's been in for about 4 weeks now, so it's not really doing a whole lot. The real estate sector had a 2 up, 2 down, hit one target and not quite the other, so it's either going to continue or we're going to have an inside week. XLB is materials. You got a red inside week, but closed above these EMAs, so really interesting to see what it does. That may have been the corrective activity that it needed because it gapped down pretty huge. So XOP had a 2-1-2 down, and didn't quite hit its target, so but it is in a bearish trend. It's just not an actionable signal there. Your favorite airline probably had a red week. So Jets here has an inside red week. It's not a shooter or anything like that, to give us an actionable signal as far as with the candle, but we do have an inside week, so it can 2-1-2 in either direction. Lit, your favorite lithium and battery ETF, had a 2 up, 2 down on the week and hit its target. So again, it's probably going to either continue or we're going to find an inside week. And then I'm going to do KWeb when I get to the work. So we already did XLEZOM, SOXL. So we had our corrective week, and then we corrected right back to the this is my 100. Yeah, this is the 100. Last time it did that, it corrected, and then next week it came back above. So really interesting to see what this does. If it continues, then it can definitely come on down to 2050, and then maybe even to the 1740. Let me look at it on the, yeah, we have like a shoulder here and a head. So this is, it's really going to depend on how NVIDIA, TCOM, all of those places act to see what it does. It can come up here and make this a shoulder area, because we have our shoulder here, we have our head. Our shoulder would have to break above 25 and hold to invalidate this structure here. But yeah, EMAs are turning down. Looks like chips are getting some corrective activity, especially if NVIDIA does that. Then Yeah, you can expect XOXL to continue down. AMD will probably not outside month, but we know that if it doesn't finish it that month, sometimes it finishes on the next month. I don't necessarily think that it's going to get all the way back to 81 though, y'all. To be honest, like, I think that may be the corrective activity, like, limit. Or at least, maybe 92 it could get to, because it filled this gap here. This was the gap that it was going for, which was at this 109.72. And if you look at it, once it filled the gap, the bulls stepped in. So really, this is honestly looking like it could at least be, it may do like an H. So we got that 2 down, 2 up, come up for some corrective activity. It may reject here at 117 and then H and come on down if it wants to continue down. But yeah, it's looking like they're going to be bearish because they were bullish for so long. But we do want to keep an eye on it because, again, it filled this gap and then it recovered. So got to see what it does. China stocks had a 2 up, 2 down, and basically hit their target. Baba barely did a 2 down, but it still does have room to go, and it basically rejected that 200 there. See? Rejected the 200 and came right back on down. So we know that, this is in a bearish trend, and it's basically short the rip. It rips, and then you just short it. So you just wait for the next rip, and then short it again. And I actually did not mean to have square on here, or Ford. We were watching Ford though because we said that it had boomed. It's had its corrective activity, so I'm interested to see if Ford is going to come back down into this chop or if it's actually going to move to the upside. All right, so really quick, let me go check and see if there are any questions before I get to the watch list. No questions. All right, so getting to the weekly list, a few things I want to point out. So we talked about XLB and how it had the inside week. Even though it was red, new gave us an inside week that was green. So we are really looking for new to break out of this range if it wants to continue going to the upside. If it can really break above 158, it can really fly. So this may be something that we may have to watch for next month as well. It has already triggered the rev strat on the month, but we know that it's not going to finish this in a week. So I would be looking for that continuation. If it can break above there. Now, if it rejects it again, then I would go ahead and play it to the downside. Because, wait, 1, 2, well, no, you don't have a PMG there. But, yeah, if it rejects again, then I would play it to the downside. We talked about XLY with the inside week with the doji. Some of my favorite ones on that is HD. Now, one thing I wanted to point out with HD is all these wicks. My gracious. This right here, though, is telling me that the buyers are buying it. So we're on the weekly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. It's been a fight. Actually, 7 weeks. It has been a fight between the bears and the bulls. The bears keep trying to push it down, and the bulls keep buying it up, and it's ending green. So essentially, the bulls are sort of winning. On the weekly, in a sense, it's still making higher. It hasn't made a lower low. So it's still, it looks like the bulls are trying to gain control here. A good test of them gaining control is a break above that 305 area. Then it may at least come and fill this gap here at this 313. So HD, may be able to break out. But you see here, this is what it's doing. And you see that on the week with all these wicks and stuff like that. But that was all of this where the bulls were buying it, and now they're trying to iron out this 200. So you know what I always tell y'all, if they can make it above it and hold above it, then we should be bullish. We can at least start heading towards this gap fill to the upside, and then we'll be back into this chop range right here. But it may be a nice catch if we can catch that breakout. And then this also looks like a flag. So you got the up and then the flag. bull flag for the breakout. So I like HD for that. Starbucks also gave us an inside week. Now last week we were looking to see if it was going to break above this 102 because it would put us back above our EMAs and give us some strength to the upside, especially after we've been, rejecting down here so many times. However, we're right back down here. So we do also have a shoulder head, and this could be our shoulder area. So we may iron this out a little bit more, but I need Starbucks to break 102 for me to be bullish on more upside. Otherwise, this could, if it breaks 96, it could get a little ugly with this head and shoulders, and it can come on down to this 89.39. Because technically after that run, the Bears took control and they've kind of kept control. You see that they're basically shorting the rip. Nike. Inside week, we were watching it last week to see if it would 3-2 up, and it didn't have enough strength. So, still watching it. On the 2 week, we were also looking to see if it could break above. And to be honest, you guys, the way it rejected, because we were looking here, right? Yeah, we were looking here, and it had some strength, but then it looks like it just folded. And even though it's coming here, like it rejected this, folded down, and now came back up and rejected this, which is bearish. So it looks like it's still in short the rip mode, basically. So it's not really set up yet, but if the bulls decide to take control, instead of a 3-2, they gave us a 3-1-2. It would be a 3-1-2 up or down. This isn't one of my strongest ones, but it is in that XLY sector. So this is an XLK play. I like the shooter and inside week here on CRM. So now, granted, if it does go and force 207.84 to 205.14, it'll give you a couple of dollars. But then if it does continue down, because we do have like a head and shoulders here, then we have some room, some stops to take out. So keep CRM on your watch list. If it goes to the upside, I really would like to see it break 218 first. Otherwise, this is really a chop area. It needs to break either to the downside out of this or to the upside. There is a rev strat here on the week, so if it, on the day. So if it does do a 1-2-2 up, can look for that 218, and then see if it rejects there and keeps going, because this is almost like a flag. Or if this is, it could be a bear flag too, honestly. Or if it loses this support and starts moving to the downside. Because if you see that these EMAs are starting to get tight now, once they gap away and then they start getting tight, if one crosses below and it starts moving down, that's a bearish signal. Although, again, we're still on the daily above our 200. So it's just, corrective activity for the most part. But that is a bearish signal. Another one on the week is targets. You got an inside week. Target finally moved out of this range that it's in and broke down. So to be honest, it could range in this area, but the 3-1-2 down is a decent move. 130.54 to this 125.15, or to that 138.62 to the upside. Snow. So snow has been ranging. And this is something we kind of want to just watch to see if it breaks out of this range. There is an inside week setup here, and we are still bullish for the most part. It tried to break below, and they bought it right back up, so they're buying the dip. But it really needs to break. This 185 area is the top of this shoulder area. So if it can't break that 185, then I'm still bearish. Otherwise, it needs to break that 194, and it can really move to the upside. It's kind of been stuck here, but it finally allowed the 200 to come down. It rejected it, made it above, and now is holding above. So, but we do have a potential head and shoulders on the daily. Another inside week. A lot of these are inside weeks, so you're going to find a lot of them. Ones that we have been watching. This was also on our 2-week scanner. Is TTD. It still did not move. So this actually might just flag and stay in the flag for a little while before it does something. You know, it had this 1-2 up, which really wasn't a weekly signal, but if it kept going, it was going to trigger the 2-week. So now we're still looking, because if it does a 2-1-2 up, then that can on the week trigger that 2-week to at least get it to the 78.57, and then it does still have room and go to that 86 if it wants to continue. It's also had several green months though. That's actually the thing. Several green months on a lot of things and needing some corrective activity. CVS. So CVS has been beat down. I actually got a little surprised at how beat down it has been in. It has been, and it's been in this downtrend. So now I'm looking to see if CVS is going to find support here. So you can see here, this was a support before. So can it find support? If not, it does still have more room to the downside. But I mean, is CVS gonna get to 56? It could. It could. Its all-time high is 111. That's half of its all-time high. But hey, you know. So, but again, we've had all of this. So it may be ready to base a little bit and move to the upside. It's not 100%, well, not 100, even not a whole lot, even 60% bullish, but we do have an inside week here. So I just want you to keep your eyes. We're going to keep our eyes on CVS. Even if it does move to the upside, you could play it to the upside for a couple of dollars if you know how to play the range. All right, so I think the last thing is the 50% monthly triggers. You got EA. Remember, we only have one more week of month left. So I only tried to put things on here that I thought could actually do it based on their ATR. So EA, Docu, still has about $4 to go, can do that in 2 days. EMPH can definitely do that in 1 day. Roblox. Now, Roblox may not finish that, but it may finish it next month. So, you know, if anything, maybe give it a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks for that play. Rivian, which I'm so surprised that this thing is all the way down at 13.50. That's crazy. And Bank of America. So remember, I will be talking about how banks, there's a doji here on the month, but if it does continue to the downside, that 26.83, I mean, it's only $1 away. It can definitely do that. McDonald's has not, it did trigger to the upside and it came back in. So now I am looking at this as if this may be bearish. That may be the rejection point, mostly because McDonald's has been on a tear. It hit an all-time high and it don't want to fall. I think I actually may want it to fall more than it wants to fall, but it rejected that 291.10. So that's pivotal to me only because that is also, we know that if it rejects, then usually that means the other side has taken control, or that's an area where they short or buy at. So it looks like they shorted it. So you do also have a shooter here on the week, which is good. So looking at McDonald's for the shooter 2 up, 2 down, come down here to this 286.58, which would complete the outside month. AMGN is another one. It is just similar to McDonald's where it triggered to the upside, but it rejected. So it actually may come down, and then now you have your actionable signal on the week. You got a 3-1, 2 down. If it decides, or if it did a 3-1, 2 up, then you know it can go to the upside and try to go for this. Now again, the 241 is more likely not going to hit that this week, but if it ends like in like a hammer, you can look for that 2 down, 2 up for next month. And it could start coming for some of these stops here. Pivotal place though, because if it broke to the upside, you know, it's been rejecting this. So if it broke to the upside, that'd be pretty good. Otherwise, I know this signal is 225.54. I would like to see it break below that 224, honestly, because then these will start turning back down for the downtrend. PEG, similar to the last three, they all hit the 50% to the upside and reject it, came back in. So looking to see if they finish or if they act, and all of these actually have signals on the week where you can take it back to the downside if they are not going to finish to the upside. Same thing with Nike. We did just look at Nike because it has that inside week. So we know it rejected. We either want to see it climb back to the upside or it may go back down. Then, of course, we were talking about Zion. We already talked about Zion. All right, so that's all I have for you guys today. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your weekend and happy trading.